If you want to really stick out to brokers and make sure you are the guy that gets all the deals sent to, you're gonna wanna stay tuned for this one. I'm Shane Harder and I'm obsessed with becoming financially free through real estate. So let's become financially free together.
All right, so I just got to the Long Beach airport and I'm getting ready to drive up to LA to go meet up with Andrew Tashjian, really great friend of mine, actually. I've known him for many years, and he's a commercial real estate broker. I really want to find out how guys like that are able to help investors streamline their process, be more competitive, and just kill it in the real estate game. Let's check it out.
Before we jump into that interview with Andrew, I just wanted to give you a quick opportunity to get to know us at Greenlight Multifamily a little bit better. We do real estate syndications. If you're interested at all in passive real estate investing, where you really don't have to do much other than just put your money into the deal, this is a perfect opportunity for you. If you click on the link below, we'll give you a phone call and we'll start getting to know each other a little bit and see if we're a good fit together. So without further ado, let's hear it from Andrew. I'm here with my good friend Andrew. We've been friends for many years, and I keep seeing all these posts on Facebook where you're like, yeah, I just sold this like insane building. I'm like, oh my gosh, dude, he's like crushing it at life right now. That's amazing. Your role is a commercial real estate broker, right?
I'm a commercial real estate broker, right? So I help sell buildings. Sometimes I help buyers buy buildings. Sometimes I help tenants find buildings to lease. And sometimes I help landlords lease buildings they own. So I kind of have like a 4-point strategy to my business. No, real estate's always been a real big interest of mine since I was a little kid. I mean, I loved playing the game of Monopoly as a kid. It was just so simple and so fun, the idea of like buying a property, buying 2 more, then you've got a Monopoly and you can build.
Owning the world.
Owning the world, man. Build hotels, build houses, that all just made a whole lot of sense to me. When I was in college, I was studying business, and I found that it was interesting, but it was hard for my mind to wrap around.
We were in school together.
We were
both in the same
and you're
business
learning
school,
about
and it was
stocks
amazing.
and bonds and derivatives, and it's all very like, you can't touch a stock or see it necessarily, but I can look at a building and say, okay, you got a building, there's a box, there's a bunch of people inside that box to pay the owner of that box rent. And that's very simple, and it's something that my mind just gravitated towards. So.
You know, the thing I love about that too is stocks, they have the possibility to go to zero.
Right.
But a building, that's almost not ever gonna happen.
It rarely does it happen. I mean, even if a fire lit that whole building on fire, there's gonna be insurance. You still own the dirt that's underneath the building, so you have the inherent land value of that. So I don't know, real estate's always been something that's simple to me, it's interested me, and I got into it right out of college, and it's been a nice run. So I graduated from Brigham Young University in 2009. I jumped right into commercial real estate, and I've been doing it ever since. So it's been now 11 years.
Cool.
Over a decade.
And so why did you jump? I mean, you already said you were like really into, it was fascinating to you.
Right.
But like, why specifically here? Like, did you seek out a job opportunity and you got it, or did you like use a connection, or where did that come from?
That's a good question. I'm from LA. I'm a native son. I was born and raised here, and I've always had an infatuation with tall buildings, right? Because in commercial real estate, you can be selling warehouses in Las Vegas or in Arizona, or I can sell slips in a marina, or I can sell anything, right? But I like big buildings. I like downtown urban centers. I'm very interested in like the sociology and like the ecosystem around a big place like this. And so when I graduated college, I knew I wanted to be in downtown LA, and I knew I wanted to have some involvement in these buildings. I love history, Shane, and history is like a major part. Each of these buildings has a story. That one right there was built in 1925.
Which one?
The brick building here, 818 West 7th Street, built in 1925, like right in the heart, in like the economy was great, right? It was the Roaring 20s, everyone had money, and the 1920s buildings are gorgeous. They're ornate and immaculate. The architectural Beaux Arts features. They didn't spare any expense, and I think that's really cool. Then you see buildings that were built in like the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. Not quite as nice. Very few buildings built in the 70s were, in my opinion, all that pretty, but they had a cool kind of mid-century styling to them, but their quality wasn't quite as great. And recently, here we are in the late 2000, whatever I don't even know what you call this new decade, 2020s. We're at the top of a 10-year bull market, and there's a lot of money floating around. And so people are using that money to build gorgeous edifices, including this one here, which is my actual office building. It's the tallest building in the Western United States. And it's gorgeous on the inside. So I love buildings, man. I geek out about them. The same people geek out about cars or racehorses or stamps or whatever. For me, I love buildings, and that's what want to transact and collect myself someday.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. And so you have clients that are real estate investors.
I do.
Explain to me a little bit about how that world works.
Well, I mean, it's the same principle, right? It's the same principle as buying like a single family house. Say, okay, I'm going to buy it for X amount of money. I think I could rent it out to the next person for X amount, and you look at how that returns, and if it makes sense financially for you, you'll do it. It's the same thing with these big buildings, but just on a larger scale. So you can take this building, for example, 660 South Figueroa. I sold this building right here a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And the former owner had, I think, not done a tremendous job leasing the building up and increasing its cash flow. Yeah. And we sold it to a private family here in Los Angeles, a private investor that looked at it and said, hey, I can get all these rents up. The rents aren't quite as high as they should be. And also the lobby needed some updating. There was some just TLC that the building was in need of. And so that investor bought it, put money into it, restructured the rates, redid the marketing, and it's really made the building much more valuable.
Cool.
And it's done quite well with it. Generally speaking, this is very rare. It's rare for a building this big to be owned by a single person.
Well, and it seems like building that big downtown LA to let itself get run down as well. It seems like, you know, not necessarily as big of a possibility for like improvement on it, but maybe I'm wrong.
It doesn't happen super often, but in the world that we're in, people are always pushing forward, right? You maybe at one point this was a fantastic, amazing building, but then this bad boy got built, and this thing's like the new shiny toy
object,
in the toy room, and so all the tenants want to be hanging out with this toy and not that toy anymore. So then there's an opportunity for someone to come in and make this building more appealing in the eyes of potential tenants. But most of the buildings in any downtown that you go to are going to be owned by large corporations. Sometimes they're publicly traded. You know, they're really they're owned by massive ownerships. Every now and then you'll find one like this that's actually owned by a private individual, and I always think that's kind of cool.
It is cool. But you know what? It's interesting, the stuff that you're talking about though, where you see an opportunity to increase rents and to update some of the stuff. That's like the exact same discussion that I see, like me and everybody on the team that I'm a part of having all the time about apartment complexes.
It's the same thing. It's just on a little bit larger scale, but it's the exact same thing.
It's a lot larger scale.
And also you look at like where a property is location-wise. So when this building was purchased, this building here didn't exist. This hotel didn't exist. There was it was a Wilshire Grand Hotel. It was a 24-story hotel, really dilapidated, very old, in a phenomenal, irreplaceable location. And so the owner of Korean Airlines owned it, and he decided he's going to tear his hotel down and build this anew. Yeah, so the people that were buying 660 South Figueroa several years ago knew that tomorrow the building would be worth more than it is today, because the building across the street, this building was just a dirt pit, huge construction site. And so they said, well, we could buy it, we could live through maybe 2 years of construction across the street, but once this is done, this is going to be like the hottest corner in downtown LA, and we were able to buy it at a time when it wasn't quite as expensive. So you want to buy in the path of progress. You want to buy in a location that's always going to be in high demand, because things go up and down, right? The economy is cyclical, and there's going to be an earthquake. There's going to be, unfortunately, hopefully not, but a terrorist attack. Things happen in the world that makes the economy go like this. You want to buy, for me, you want to buy in a location that's always going to be in demand. For me, that's by an ocean. It's by a major school. It's by a dense urban center. You've got to be close to a magnetic pole that's like pulling people. They want to be, everyone wants to go to the beach. That will never change. God stopped making land a long time ago, and oceanfront property is always going to be in very, very high demand.
I love how you said that.
Yeah.
God stopped making land a long time ago.
So write it down. It's an important quote.
I might quote you on that someday. I love it. So good. So good to see you. Anyway. So can we go through some of the details on this building? Are you able to reveal any of that stuff? Like are you privy to any of those discussions where it's like, this is what the cash flows are looking at like now, this is what we think we can put them to? Or is that not part of what goes to brokers?
I could tell you, I literally don't even remember. I have so many deals and numbers and just circulating in my head. Yeah. We sold this 7 years ago at the time. I want to say, I can give you an example. I think rents at the time were probably in the $2.50 per square foot range. Since the owners bought it and did what they did with it, I think they're now kind of more in the $3.50 a square foot range. So that's a massive increase from there. I think a lot of that's just timing. A lot of real estate and any investing is timing. They bought kind of toward the beginning of, kind of right after a recession, and so things naturally went up. But I don't remember any of the specific numbers.
Yeah. Cool. Just out of my own curiosity, what was the sale price on it? that's a huge building.
I want to say this guy was about $70 million at the time.
And now it's because, and these are valued off of cash flow.
It depends. Sometimes they're valued off of cash flow. Sometimes they're valued off of like price per pound. So, for instance, if that entire building was empty, an investor wouldn't want to touch it because they buy it. There's zero cash flow. They're paying their property taxes. They're paying all the expenses. However, a user, let's say Apple, Apple's not going to buy this with tenants on the inside, but Apple might buy it if it's a completely empty building. They could instantly plug their people into. So Apple's not going to buy it on cash flow. Apple's going to buy it on location and price per pound. How much is it a square foot? Is what we're paying higher than what the comps show? And if it's not, then maybe it's a good deal for them.
Yeah, cool. Wow, that's such a fascinating concept. Because yeah, for multifamily, it's just all based off cash flow, really.
That's almost always based off cash flow.
Yeah.
Correct. It's cash flow. It's value add. I mean, if the cash flow is X today, what can it be tomorrow?
Yeah.
That's kind of how we'll talk.
So if your rents are down, you're like, don't sell then, but maybe
yeah,
you have
but
to.
you never know. Like
Maybe
in the state of California, you have rent control in certain areas, and so you got to be mindful of some of the rules and what you're able to do. Because there's properties where an investor can't just come in and jack rates up 20%. Sometimes there's rules. You can't increase by more than 5% a year, or whatever it's going to be. So you always want to be mindful.
At the same time, if you jack up more than 10, 20% a year, your tenants are gone, man.
Usually, but then again, if you're across the street from the beach in Santa Monica, there's a tenant for that. There's just always there's just people will pay. If you're in Beverly Hills, Santa Monica, Venice Beach, Manhattan Beach, there's just certain areas where people will, there just seem to always be resources for those people to live there.
Cool. So what are you working on right now? Like what kind of things can, let's say there's 100 million people watching this right now. Like what could they help you with?
So I represent a portfolio of over 5 million square feet here in Los Angeles that I predominantly lease. I work for the owners of these buildings and I lease them. So the owner of this building will call me and say, hey Andrew, I've got 4 empty floors, I need to fill those floors. And so it's my job to then go out and scour the community and try and find tenants to fill those floors, and I'm paid a percentage basically of what any tenants will pay on those floors if we sign a deal. So my job is to create a fantastic relationship with the tenant community in Los Angeles. So I'm always very mindful of tenants that are growing, tenants that, oh my God, there was a fire, burnt down a building, all the tenants in that building need somewhere to go. Well, I'm the first guy on the phone trying to help those people find a home. I'm also very interested in forging good relationships with tenant rep brokers. In most transactions, there's going to be a broker that represents the building and a broker that represents the tenant. Okay, I usually represent the building. So there's brokers that represent tenants, and I want all those brokers to know about my building. They're, hey, I've got 4 floors available. They've got sick views. The rental rate's X. There's all these different components of the space. You should bring your tenants by.
Yeah,
and all
absolutely.
the tenant rep brokers do is represent tenants. And so it's very normal for a tenant rep broker to have 20 or so tenants at any given time that they're working with. And so for me, it behooves me to become good buddies with all those dudes because I can just try and get them to bring tenants to my buildings.
Yeah, because they keep getting their deal flow going.
Yeah,
and then you create the funnel for them. Basically.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily like in the yellow pages trying to like cold call companies. Hey, do you need office space?
Yeah.
That's kind of what tenant rep brokers do for the most part. I am very attentive to who's growing in LA. Los Angeles is not a place where law firms are doubling and tripling in size and accounting firms. Like that was back in the day. These days it's technology, media, and fashion. Those enterprises are growing like crazy. Netflix and Hulu are prime examples. I mean, Netflix has gobbled up all the available space in Hollywood. All of it. There's tremendous scarcity in that market, and as a consequence, the rental rates have increased dramatically. Developers are trying to buy land to build more buildings to house more Netflix, right? So those are the growing enterprises, and so as a broker who's in charge of leasing spaces, getting spaces occupied in my buildings, it's important that I'm like aware of who's around and who's growing. Because sometimes, every now and then, you can bring in one of those tenants without a tenant rep broker, and whatever. The ends justify the means. Sometimes we do deals with or without brokers, but tenants are growing like crazy. A couple years ago, I leased a space in one of my buildings to a tenant that had some discount code software for online shopping. Okay. There are 10 dudes. They needed 1,000 feet, and I was like, all right, yeah, here's a space, whatever. And I kind of forgot about them. Yeah. I should have become best buddies with these dudes, and not in a disingenuous way, but that's part of my business, is to be in front of people who have enterprises that could be growing. These 10 guys grew from 1,000 feet in my building. We grew them to 3,000 feet, then they went to 9,000 feet, then they went to 20, then anyways, within an 18-month span, from the day I moved them into their space, and these guys were like working on beanbags on the floor, they just sold their company to PayPal for $4 billion. And they leased 180,000 square feet. The commission on that 180,000 square feet would have been around $4 million. Like if I had just stuck with these guys, and you know what I mean, that could have been my commission, but it wasn't. So that's the kind of thing that I'm very interested in, is to be in front of those type of tenants.
I think I'd be interested in $4 million any day as well.
Yeah, any day of the week. Any day of the week. Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of people that would put themselves in that same situation.
You know, you look at a market like downtown LA, it's just, to me, it's a big monopoly board. There's opportunities everywhere, there's landmines everywhere, you could have to pay some reassessment or this or that, but there's opportunities all over the place. And so my job is to understand that ecosystem, understand the different buildings, understand who's inside all these buildings, and I can make money any which way, selling buildings, representing tenants, representing landlords, leasing spaces. There's a million different ways to make that money. It's all a big game of monopoly to me.
So tell me this. So let's say you've got an investor that comes to you, and they're like, you know what? I do commercial real estate investing. I buy not apartment buildings, but I buy business, you know, like buildings like this,
yeah,
and then rent them out to tenants. To me, it seems like the real estate market is pretty saturated with buyers. Like it's very much of a seller's market right now. Is that still the same in your space?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I tell that person to get in line.
So
there's
tell me
40
this.
other people just like you. What makes
Exactly.
you special? Why should I want to work with you more
Exactly.
than the next guy?
So that's my question for you, is like, what can an investor that's just starting a relationship with you do to be more competitive?
Right. So a lot of times when people will try and buy a building, tie it up, open up escrow, put it under contract, it's important to me that that person has shown to me that they have the ability to perform. I want to see that they have the money ready to be deployed to buy this building. A lot of times guys will go and try and tie up a building and then they don't even have the money, but they won't tell you that. They'll just try and tie up the building. They want to tie it up, then they'll go scramble and try and raise money and find friends that will, and then I don't want to work with people like that. No one does, because not that they're bad people, but you know, they're hustling just like I'm trying to hustle.
More work for you.
It's not a sure thing. I want to do what's going to make me the most money the quickest, and what's going to make my client the most money the quickest, because this is one of the most important lessons you can learn in real estate. Time kills all deals. So the longer a deal takes, the more the likelihood that something crazy happens. You know, just anything in the world could happen, and you just don't, you know, the Northridge earthquake could strike the next day, then the price could plummet by 40%. You know, so when it comes to an investor trying to work with me, I think it's important that you show me you have the ability to perform. Show me a track record. You know, you can say, hey, listen, Andrew, this past year I spent $100 million buying X, Y, and Z. You know, we didn't default on any of those. You know, we performed on all of those escrows. We have X amount of money and funds available to be deployed. Take me to lunch. I don't mind being pampered, wine to dine. I can't be bribed. That's of course illegal. But you know, it's the guys that like care about you. Like, hey man, like, they want to get to know you, and you know, at the end of the day, if I'm selling a building for a client, my job, I have a fiduciary duty to get my seller the very best price possible, period. And so that's a whole different business, right? But if you're coming to me looking for me to help you buy a building, to represent you in buying a building, man, I have literally 100 people trying to get me to help them buy buildings right now. How do you stand out?
Yeah.
And if
so
you
to
want to
stand out, like you said, treat you good, be a friend, be cool, obviously show that you can close.
That's probably the most important thing of anything.
Of course it
because
is.
Any broker, all they care about, as much as they might like a free lunch, who cares about that?
Yeah.
They want to make sure they get paid.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to really spin my wheels and represent you and spend a ton of time on, you know, on your behalf, I want to make sure you're actually going to do what you're going to say you're going to do.
I think, you know, I think you may be putting like a little bit too much of like a greedy spin on this, because really it's just a practical issue. Like, there's no sense, if you have 100 people asking you to do stuff, why in the world would you spend your time with the, you know, 50% that aren't going to actually close? Nobody likes working for free. Yeah. I don't think anyone in the world likes working for free, and it's not practical, and it's disrespectful to the guys that are going to close. That's what it looks like. That's what it seems like to me.
It's all about respect to me. Like, I respect myself. I respect my time. I respect the time of the people that might be selling a building. I don't want to waste their time, like calling them and running them, you know, through on late on a Friday afternoon at 2 or something. That's just going to be not going to amount to anything. I want to make sure that I'm being useful with my time, because time's all we have. Time is money, obviously. And you know, just anyone that will make my job easier. Like, you actually have the money, you're actually gonna pay a market price, you actually have a real strong motivation, because all the other guys are like, yeah, if you find me something super, 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 super good, some screaming hot deal.
Well, everyone.
And it's like, I would buy it myself. Like, you know what I mean? Like, or whatever.
I've heard that before. Yeah.
I'm not out here just trying to and I don't work for you. So you have to realize, brokers do not make a single penny until they transact a deal. Yeah. So knowing that I don't work for you and I'm not gonna make any money off of you unless you actually buy something, keep that in mind. Yeah. Know that now, there's always folks say, oh, these brokers are paid too much money, deal happens and make all this money. And you can make a lot of money, but what people don't see is all the misfires, all the times that you tried to put a deal together and that didn't work, and you spun your wheels for 3 months looking for buildings for this guy, and then he was a con man and he actually didn't have any money, and that stuff happens, right? So you have to be judicious.
That's so interesting. So, if we're gonna wrap this up, then as far as like tips for investors, so working with commercial brokers, we've got obviously be able to close, know that you can close on a deal. Okay. Be kind, right? Like, just don't be a dick about stuff.
Right.
And then what would be some other things? Like, what are other ways that they can do?
We talked about track record. Like, show me your track record. But Shane, I could walk up to you and be like, hey, I own all these buildings, I've done X, Y, and Z. That's kind of like anecdotal. Spend the time to put it together in a 2-page, resume. Hey, show this to the owner of the building. He'll see that we're a real company, we have a real track record of closing, and we're the real deal. That would make life easy.
So right now you got like 100 people wanting you to do stuff. If one of the people that comes to you presents those kinds of things, I'm assuming they get bumped up to the top 10%.
Exactly. If there's 100 people trying to get me to represent them and work with them, my job as a smart broker is to say, okay, of all these 100 people, with whom am I going to have the highest likelihood of closing a deal? Yeah. And so you need to figure out who's really active, who actually has the money, who can make, who has a track record that you could easily show, who's easy to work with, who's, what I mean? Like,
so what are things like that? What are things like that people can do to basically like streamline that for you? Like, what makes it easy to work with versus difficult?
Also, a building to a company that has a strong construction capacity. So that makes my life easy, right? So they can do their own construction. They understand inherently what it takes to upgrade a plumbing system or electrical or mechanical system. Whereas the next guy, if he doesn't, if he's like, well, I gotta go and if he's asking me, hey, do you know a good contractor? I'm thinking, man, this is not who I want to work with. Yeah. I want to work with a guy he's got an in-place team. He's done this before. He knows exactly how this stuff works. That increases that surety that he's a good buyer. There's always little things that slowly start to increase your confidence in them, and finally, like, that's my buyer. I'm gonna work with this guy. I believe in this guy. And sometimes it's just authenticity. If you look me in the eyes and say, listen, I'm dead set on buying a building this year. I want to buy it in downtown LA. I want to buy it through you. And they give you that confidence. Not that you should believe everyone, but I do at the same time believe in the power of a handshake and the power of looking someone in the eyes and
way to be old school, man.
I'm old school, bro.
Yeah, I love that. So what kind of things as a broker are you doing for investors? What is it like? Where do your duties start and end? Where do we get to like a point where like people are expecting you to do things that's just like that's just simply not your role?
Yeah, no, that's a really, really good question, and I think that needs to be clarified for a lot of people. Brokers, I think sometimes will try and be all things to all people, but there's danger in doing that. I'm not an attorney. I haven't passed the bar. I don't know like the ins and outs of like intricate legalese. And I can try and decipher, and I can do a very good job actually, but that's not my skill set. And I want to be very clear in terms of what I can do, what I can't do, what you're hiring me to do, and what you're hiring me not to do. I can review legal documents, but I can't give you legal advice. I'm always going to encourage my clients to hire an attorney to go over a purchase and sale agreement, or to go over contracts, to go over leases. That's very, very important. In terms of putting a value on a building, oftentimes a person will ask us, maybe a building owner will say, hey, I don't want you to sell my building yet, but can you just give me an opinion of value? You know what I mean? What do you think you can sell it for? That's something I'm able to do, right? I can look at the building, I can look at comps, I can say, okay, what's a similar building like this traded for in the past 6 months or the past year? I can look at the cash flow and kind of figure out where do I think an investor would start to be interested, at what point price-wise.
That'd be interesting, and I think kind of difficult to run comps on buildings that are so unique.
It's hard. I mean, there's no perfect comp. There's never a perfect comp, but
because single family, that's easy. but like, you
no,
know,
this stuff's
it's
completely different. I mean, you use price per square foot quite often, you know. But I mean, this location here is extremely different than 2 blocks that way. It's just also different. But so I can render an opinion of value, but I'm not an appraiser. Just like I could read a legal document, but I'm not a lawyer. I can give you an opinion of value, but I'm not an actual appraiser. If you want that, I recommend that you hire an appraiser. I've got several of them I can introduce you to who will actually go in, put their money where their mouth is, like really stand by a valuation and look at it in much further detail than I would. And there's a number, I mean, what financing, right? I can kind of give you my 2 cents on where I think you can find financing. I think that I would much rather make an introduction to a group that can help finance a building. Property management, same deal. I'm not going to manage a property. I'm not here to, you know, even marketing. Like, yeah, I could take a picture of a building, but I don't want to do. I want to hire a professional photographer like you, or you know, someone knows what they're doing, to really shoot a building to help market it for me. We market buildings. My company has an in-house marketing department, which I have access to and can use, you know, at any given time. I have the power to scour the market and basically find every building that's listed for sale or that's listed for lease. Okay, so that's a service that I can provide to people. So if you're like, hey man, like, what can I buy in downtown? Now, downtown LA is a growing market. You know, you get the Staples Center, you got all this stuff, this action, there's cranes in the skyline, there's massive buildings being built. I want to get in on that action because I know long-term this is going to be a good investment. Well, I can help you find all the buildings that are for sale down here. If you own a building here and you want to seek the highest possible valuation, the highest possible price for your building, hire me. I can put it on the market, put it in front of tens of thousands of investors. Over the years of doing this, man, if anything moves in this market, I know about it. I know every single owner of every single building, and I know most of the buyers are sniffing around for properties. So, you know, and it's not even just in downtown LA. That's like home base for me, but I transact all over the world. Specifically do a lot in Utah, in the state of Utah, do a lot all over Los Angeles. So if you want to expose a property to the widest possible set of eyeballs, have me sell it for you, right? That's where I think we add a lot of value, because it's all about eyeballs, right? The more people that look at something, the more you can get people trying to buy that thing, the higher the price is going to be because you've created this demand. There's so many people trying to buy it, right? And that's really the kind of the secret sauce to what I do. I can expose something to a tremendous amount of people. And usually what we'll do, let's say, you know, you wanted to sell a building in Salt Lake City, just to use that as an example. I would sell that building. I would bring in a broker that we have relationships all over the country, right, with my company. I'd bring in a local person to work with and doing that, but then with our kind of global reach, we reach people in China and Europe and New York City and kind of all over the country to try and bring in, to tell the story the right way and to try and bring in the best price possible.
Tell the story the right way, but I think almost more importantly, tell the story to the right person.
Yeah.
Make sure your audience is correct.
Yeah, you make sure you've got the right audience. You want to know your audience. It's like giving a speech. You know, you need to know who's in front of you. You need to frame your speech the right way.
It's like creating an ad.
It's like creating an ad.
Who's your ad? Yeah.
We're storytellers. I'm storytelling all day long. That's what this is. To be honest with you, you're trying to help someone understand what it would feel like to lease this office space. So what it would feel like to own this building or to sell this building and to deploy that capital towards some other investment opportunity. We're storytellers. I would say that wherever you are kind of in life and in your investment journey, I think it's important to have some measure of real estate in your portfolio. I just think that long-term, real estate is not going anywhere anytime soon. As we've noted earlier, God stopped making land a long time ago, and people should, in a diversified
as long as people
portfolio,
keep making babies, man, you're going to have a growing real estate market.
It's always going to be there. Yeah. And so it can be a tremendous way to create passive income for one's self, and it's fun. It's not overly complex. It can be stable, but you have to apply correct principles, right? Buy in a great location, buy in the path of progress, buy a building that makes sense financially in terms of the rents. Make sure the price per pound, the amount that you're paying for a building makes sense. You have to have an investment thesis with everything that you buy. And some people, I like to think I do, but a lot of people have like a sixth sense about real estate. They just know, you know what, this corner is going to be hot someday. And you want to be there notice it before everyone else does. Sure. So
notice that path of progress.
Notice the path of progress. Be attentive to like which way things are going in the world. And I just think it is important for people, whether you're some, very wealthy individual or someone just starting out, maybe a young college student. Take that leap. You can learn a lot from listening to a podcast like this or reading a book. But I'll tell you, the only real way to learn is to do it, or try doing it. Even if you don't actually do it, try. Bump your head against the wall a couple times. Like, try and figure something out. Buy a single family home. turn it and rent it. I mean, there's a million different things you can do. That depends on your creativity, the person trying to do it. But I would encourage people to learn by doing as opposed to learn by sitting by idly and just watching others.
Cool. You're the man, dude.
All right, man.
All right, guys, this is my quick rundown on all the points I gathered and I learned from me meeting with Andrew and learning about how to work with commercial brokers. So I have 7 points here. First one is they want to know that an investor can close on the property, that they have funds in hand, that they are able to have the resources to make that deal work. The next thing to do is to put together documents showing you what you've done. So what's your track record look like? Show that you care, that you want to be friends. I mean, people want to do business with other people that they like. It's a simple fact. It's not rocket science. If you like someone on a personal level more, you're a lot more likely to give them a call when an opportunity comes your way, making it as easy as possible for them. Again, I think this comes back to showing that you can close, showing you have all the documents in place, showing that you're organized, that you're professional. If you're buying it with the intent to improve the property, showing that you have the construction resources or the connections or the background to make sure that that can happen. It's all about increasing their confidence in you, increasing their confidence in your ability to purchase the property, to turn the property, to make it a profitable endeavor. If you can make it profitable, that means you're going to do it again. And you're going to probably keep coming back to them over and over again. So that matters to them. And then lastly, coming down to a good old fashioned handshake, giving them a handshake, looking them in the eyes and telling them, I will close on this property. That can actually make a difference with people. Believe it or not, in this day and age, a thing called trust and human decency still exists. Those are my main takeaways. The next episode is going to be on Matt. He's a multifamily investor, started when he was really, really young, and he has a really cool investing history and story behind him. We already did a podcast with him, but I'm going to do a video walkthrough on some of his properties with him on the next episode. So stay tuned for that one, and I can't wait to see you guys on it. Okay, bye.